You're listening to ESOPOD, the Folience ESOP Podcast. All right. Hey, welcome everybody to the ESOPOD, the Folience ESOP Podcast. I am Sean Hoy, and today I'm joined by two people I work with every day, and you have probably interacted with in some fashion. Alex and Thad, both from Shared Services IT. Thanks for joining me. How you doing?
Pretty good. How about you?
Good.
I'm doing okay.
So I said everyone has probably met you or interacted with you in some fashion, but just in case, or for new people, I'm just going to have each of you give a introduction, who you are, what you do at Folience, and maybe a background, something like that. So Alex, why don't you start?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Alex Gallegos. I'm a systems administrator here at Folience. I've been with the company for, for about a year and a half. But I have about 15 years of experience in IT in various different roles. I think the same ends up being true for a lot of people in the IT space, that they end up wearing quite a lot of different hats throughout the course of their career, and sometimes end up putting on new ones and not taking the old ones off. I've worked help desk, I've worked cybersecurity, I've worked systems administration, and a whole bunch of roles in between, and excited to be here at Folience and kind of doing the same thing here.
Yeah, I'm Thad Lux. I've been with Folience for 4 years, and when I started here, I was system administrator, like Sean and Alex there, and I've transitioned roles into a cybersecurity focused role. I'm now a security administrator, or I like to focus on updates and patching vulnerabilities and just keeping an eye on the current threat landscape, as they say in the biz, to see what we're vulnerable to and try to help protect us. So yeah, I'm the one responsible for reboots on most people's computers.
So I'm in IT and I could probably guess some of these things, but what do you like most about IT technology?
So for me, what I like about IT is that not only is it just like usually a different thing every day, but there's so many different aspects to technology that if something really resonates with you, you can use all of your other experience and training like building blocks to understand the next concept of IT. So as Alex said about wearing a lot of different hats, I think a lot of people start off in IT as doing help desk or maybe even a call center, and those are all building blocks for customer service and just the basics of using and troubleshooting that helps you grow into that next step. And IT just keeps going and going as far as new technology coming out, new products, new everything. So there's always something to learn.
Yeah, definitely. I feel pretty much the same way. I'd say IT is a really good career for anybody that likes to get lost in a subject. If you like to follow the rabbit down rabbit holes, then IT is probably a good career for you, because there's endless avenues of new technologies to explore, and you can get very, very deep in your knowledge on a lot of different topics. And I know for myself, I enjoy the problem solving aspect. I enjoy, it's like, oh, what tools can I use that I am familiar with and that I know from my toolbox that I've acquired over the course of my career in order to either solve an issue or make somebody's working life maybe a little easier.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with everything you guys said. It's fun to do something different every day. And even the stuff you do similar, there's always new technology and new ways to do things. And yeah, so I was gonna ask something weird, about you or little known fact, but I'm going to cheat and use the fact that you had at your presentation. So Thad, you said you collect hobbies. What is there a hobby that you have never collected that you're really interested in?
Yeah. So to provide some context, I at the ESOP presentation in Kansas City last week, I had on my bio that I was a professional hobby collector, and it's like the always something new to learn type of thing that I just talked about with IT. I just really like to get average at things. I never think I'm like really good or great at any of them, but if I can be average at something, then it's just like I said, it's the learning process going from not knowing how to do something to being able to execute on it. So there's a lot of hobbies I've been doing my whole life, like fishing and kayaking, and but then there's other hobbies that I don't even know if you call them a hobby, but interests that I kind of pursue until I feel like I've maxed out my potential. And one that I tried that I actually went all the way through with was flying a plane. I thought I wanted to take flying lessons, and I went to my first lesson where they kind of give you a full-on overview of everything, including going up in the plane. And I got to put my hand on the controls for a little bit. And yeah, maybe someday I'll get back into that, but that wasn't for me right there. So I never got to the average point of that. But a hobby that I've yet to try that I am very interested in, and I've done a lot of research on, I use quotes there, is Bob Ross painting. That Bob Ross style of painting is, I have watched every single episode of Bob Ross that's ever been put out there. I really like just the process of it. I've never been to an actual Bob Ross class or bought any of the paint that's required to do it. I don't have any of that stuff. So that's the one hobby that I have yet to physically pick up on, even though I've watched thousands of hours of footage. And I already feel in my head I'm already average. So I just got to grab some stuff.
Well, I might actually have some of that equipment, so
Nice.
Might be our next activity. Yeah.
I tried to do that once during the pandemic. Everybody was looking for stuff to do, and I thought, I'm going to order the stuff. I'm going to order the easel. I'm going to order the paints. And if you ask me really nicely, I might send you a photo of what I created. It does not look as good as Bob's. He makes it a lot easier than.
He makes it look easy, and also it's usually the third time he's done that painting. So like he does his first one, and then he sets one aside and he does it like on camera. So it's there. Give yourself some credit. Like if you're just trying to wing it along with him, it's a lot harder. He makes it look super easy. Yeah.
So what you're saying is that Alex needs to bring in his paintings already done, and we're all going to recreate it at our next team building.
That would be fun. Yeah.
I think a first grader could recreate it with some finger paints.
Alex, your little known fact, or the fun fact about you, was that you're a home chef of dubious quality, I believe the quote was. What is one of your favorite things that you've created, and maybe one that you thought was going to be good and then didn't turn out?
Oh no. Oh man. I think my favorites are I had a time, this was years ago, that a neighbor was like, "Hey, I'm going to be flying back from Maine. I could bring back a couple of live lobsters, but I don't know how to cook them. Would you come over and come over, do dinner? If you'll cook them, we'll have lobsters." I was like, "That sounds great." And I expected to make 2 lobsters for 3 or 4 people. And he showed up with a box of 19 living lobsters and invited the entire and invited the entire block out for this massive block party on a Friday night in the summer. It was like, okay, so we turned it into like this massive impromptu seafood party in the cul-de-sac on a Friday night. That was probably my best food-related memory, especially considering it was like, I did not wake up this morning thinking I was gonna make a neighborhood's worth of food for people. The ones that don't turn out are the ones where you think, what do I have in the fridge that's left over that I could just throw together and see how it works. Sometimes that comes out okay, and you think, oh, I really ought to write this down. And then sometimes it's like, oh, that was. It turns out there's a reason that that people don't combine these two flavors together, and maybe that's better off forgotten. Yeah, it's throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. But in this case, maybe when it sticks, that's the problem.
I think that's my primary way of cooking, unfortunately. Like I like having a meal plan, but I like having wiggle room where I can just like add stuff or see what's in the kitchen and just put stuff together. And yes, my family can definitely attest to sometimes it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Said you were going to say something.
I was just going to basically say a similar thing, was that sometimes those ones that you just kind of throw together whatever's around ends up being fantastic.
Yeah.
And it's like, I need to remember this.
For sure.
And then usually don't.
Yep. Yeah, I tend to just look up recipes randomly and like, oh yeah, I'm going to make this. And then I change some things and then don't remember any of that. And so the next time I'm just looking up another recipe.
Oh, I know the worst specific failure is I tried to make a breakfast baked Alaska. I was like, I wonder if I could do like eggs in the middle and then wrap that in like hash browns and then do like a bacon lattice around the outside and just do the whole thing in a loaf pan and then you'd slice off pieces and have that. I was like, oh, that seems like it ought to work, and it does not. The whole thing just falls apart. So if you're thinking of trying it, I recommend you don't.
Yeah, and cooking is definitely one of the hobbies that I'm average at as well. I enjoy understanding the process of why flavors and cooking is supposed to work. Shout out to Alton Brown if he's watching. That he's helped me a lot with everything. I really like how he breaks everything down. I'm gonna go ahead and answer this question too because I had just thought of one. I tend to deep fry a turkey for Thanksgiving. And I don't know if it was last year or the year before. It doesn't matter. We won't worry about specifics. But I definitely had one of those National Lampoon moments where like it looks great and you're about to open it, and then you slice open and it's just dry.
Oh.
There's like no meat in there at all. I felt really bad about that one because it was the turkey for like everybody.
All right. So we all just got back Friday from Kansas City, Missouri. Not Kansas. It's in Missouri. I have to remind myself often. From the Midwest Regional Conference, the ESOP Conference there, and I thought it went awesome. But I figured we could talk a little bit about what we thought. I know we're kind of internally tallying up our thoughts, and we might do something like that anyway, but don't have to spend a lot of time on it. What do you think of the conference? Maybe a key takeaway or idea? Thad, why don't you go first?
Oh, wow. Well, as I sit here and look at like 6 pages of notes, I think that one of my, I guess that's maybe a takeaway I had was, obviously I was going to give a presentation, and I don't know if I would have volunteered to just go to this conference just to be there without actually participating in the conference. And we had we were blessed to be the last session on the last day of the conference. So we got to watch everybody else go first before we went. And that was one of my key takeaways is there was so much like notes and valuable information that I didn't expect. It was just a lot of really good ideas floating around there. So I was pleasantly surprised with how much I found relatable or noteworthy, quite literally.
Alex, how about you?
Also thought it was a really great conference, and that a lot of our employee owners should take the opportunity to go if they get the chance. I think takeaways for me, other than the session that Thad and I presented, themes that were through all the tracks were communication and transparency, as well as the ways that we can do even better at educating our employee owners about the value proposition that the ESOP model provides. That was hit by several different speakers along several of the different tracks. And I heard the specific concept of, thinking about, if you are shopping around, maybe thinking about another job. There's the pay rise of, is it going to be a couple more dollars an hour now? But there's also the future to think about, the stock price and how that's going to grow exponentially into the future, which is definitely worth considering. As well as, just that transparency. I've heard that over and over and over again as a really big takeaway.
I'll also go ahead and answer this because I went. This is the third conference that I went to. My first was the regional conference last year in Minnesota. I think it was in Minneapolis. I also went. I went just as an employee. I wasn't on the communication team. I wasn't giving a talk. I just kind of went to absorb information. And obviously, I'm doing this now, and I'm on the communication team. So something must have stuck or resonated with me there. One of the takeaways I had was that communication is huge. Like, it's a huge topic. There's a ton of different ways to do it, and it's a full-time job, and it never stops. Like, I think you guys know you do education for cybersecurity. We all kind of do education day to day when we interact with users a little bit, but you can't be complacent, and you have to always be thinking about how to communicate, how people want to learn and hear information, and just nonstop. And there's a lot to it. I don't think anyone's probably doing it right or all correctly, and so there's always places we can see how other companies are doing it and borrow ideas, share our ideas, which is perfect. That's the perfect stage for what the ESOP conference was, I think. It's just a big knowledge share. And I think we've already answered this, but why do you think other employee owners at Folience should go to this conference? That you kind of already said, like, it was interesting to hear all the topics, and we didn't really think you'd get as much out of it as you did, maybe.
Yeah, it's one of the classic sayings that I like to say and repeat myself a lot on is, you don't know what you don't know, and this is a prime example of it. Without going to the conference, I could just read the agenda and look at all the talks on there, and just be like, yeah, some of these might be interesting, but I don't know if I want to go to a whole conference just to go to a couple that are interesting. But when you're there, you want to make good use of your time. So then you're just like, well, I got to go to something. Like, I can't just sit out in the hallway. And what I kind of chose to do was I kind of just looked at things that I've had questions about when it comes to ESOP, and understanding more of the complexities and the nuances of those things. So I found myself sitting in a session that was all about how another ESOP company went through their acquisition process, and just learning about how it goes from idea to purchasing and fully enveloping into the bringing a new company in the ESOP. Just kind of opened up a lot to my understanding of the process and how it takes time, and there's a lot of places of failure that things can break down. And that's not stuff that I deal with or really need to know about, but to me, it helps me be a better employee owner, knowing what maybe leadership and other people are up against and what they're working on to expand and make Folience as good as it can be. So that was my advice: is don't just go to these conferences because you see some stuff that you want to attend. Maybe look at stuff that's on the agenda that you would never, how do I want to say this? Stuff that you probably aren't going to do on your day-to-day at your job, but knowing how it works on the back end, that's a great place to learn those things.
Yeah, that's a great point. I almost found myself not wanting to go to the more IT roundtable discussions because I think we do that pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
It's always good to hear what other people are doing, but you almost want to branch out and be like, let's learn about something I've never even heard about before.
And we even noticed that internally before we got to the conference, as we prepared for this presentation, talking to people at Cimarron and Lifeline and the Gazette to some degree even. Thad and I realized, this is the first time that either of us have gotten this much of a look operationally into how Lifeline and Cimarron operate. And then I noticed exactly the same thing while I was at the conference. The things that I was struck by the most were either the things that I heard all of the time, over and over again, no matter what track I went to, and that were like, actually, that really sounds familiar because it sounds like it's something that we're already doing within the Folience umbrella. Alternatively, the other things that really stuck out to me rather, were the ones that were things that I had never heard of before. Brand new ideas that were like, oh, I've never considered the issue from that viewpoint, or I've never considered that solution. And so those were the two outliers that really resonated with me the most.
I think I heard one of you mention that you got the comment that it was nice to see voices from IT or other departments, because I did notice that a lot of the people presenting were leadership or marketing or sales, HR, people that are used to talk a lot to people. That's their job.
Yes. Yeah, I think if we weren't the only session that was given by somebody from the IT department, then we were one of very few. I'd have to go back and double check the agenda.
I would say that most people in IT are relatively introverted. I'm sorry for the generalization if anybody feels offended by that, because that's how I feel. I feel pretty introverted, and but the flip side of that in IT is that the stereotype that in IT we're just in a basement with no windows. I will say I am in a basement right now, but I have a window behind me. It's closed, but I have one. But that we just stick to ourselves and we're in the basement and we don't really interact with people isn't exactly true. We're interacting with people on a daily basis, constantly. So we do have to have some decent communication skills. So as much as I'm not to bury the lead, as much as I had trouble psyching myself up to do this presentation, it did kind of feel okay, just because I just kind of looked at it as I was talking to our other employee owners like we do on a daily basis. So, but yeah, I think that's maybe why that may be more advice for other IT people that might listen to this, is that think about giving one of these talks, or go to a local technology group in town or something that you might have around you, and present to your peers.
For sure.
Yeah.
I will say that I am also in a basement, but there is a window. But and I don't think Alex is in a basement, but he probably would be if you had one.
Second floor. Yep. I also have a window, but as you can see, I covered it up with light blocking curtains and then turned on artificial lighting. So I fit the stereotype.
Yeah. One thing that I know maybe about myself is I like to talk about things that I am interested in or passionate about. Like I could talk all day about nerd stuff, role playing games, IT stuff, computers. So I think it's really just finding the thing that you're interested in or passionate about, and that just do we talk about that or use that as a way into presenting or something.
For sure.
I have heard from people that I know outside of work that they listen to one of these podcasts and it's the most they've heard me talk ever, like for my entire time knowing them. So let's talk about your presentation. And I just want to point out, I thought it was one of the most polished, and like the slides themselves were the most technically like good to look at, impressive to look at. And it was obvious that you guys practiced. And I know we shared services heard it ahead of time, and I know you guys practiced it. I almost wanted to say it's good that you guys went last, because if you had gone first, it would have been a hard act to follow.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
How did it go in your eyes?
I was really happy with the way that it went. Thad and I did practice it quite a lot of times. We got to the point that in the last week before the conference, we did a dry run every single day before it was, well, not every day before it was time to present it. Every day before we left for Kansas City, we did a dry run of the presentation. And my only concern before we left was like, oh, I feel like it's going to run a little long. And then we actually got there on the day, and Dad had told me he was pretty sure this was going to happen, and I was a little nervous, but I should have trusted his judgment, because we went through it as fast as we ever had. Record time we got through it. I think we came in at like 41 minutes, and they allowed us 55. So, and then of course nobody had any questions for us at the end. So it was like, well, I guess go get lunch early and get on out of here, everybody. But overall, it went really, really well. I know that, at least for myself, I tend to kind of get nervous retroactively, and I think about, oh, I know there's stuff on slide 4 that I missed that I was going to say. There's a point that I was going to make here. There's some inflection that just didn't land the way that I wanted it to. Little things that I can be critical about the whole time, but ultimately, I think the message got through, and I think hopefully people got some ideas that they are able to take back, and that's ultimately all that matters.
Yeah, a lot of the same feelings as Alex. I know for a fact that there was at least 2 slides where I missed just like I didn't want to just read bullet points, and I had scenarios or concepts or just like an overall generalization of the slide that I wanted to express to make the point more clear. And there was a couple times I just completely did not do any of that, and it was so I'm hoping that the point still came through, and I hope I try to make up for it later. What was maybe more fun for the audience was I kept turning off the presentation on Alex every time it was his turn to speak, because we were both using our own slide advancers so that we could switch our slides for when we were at our own pace rather than whatever. And every time I would be done, I would then go down and look at my notes, and while moving papers around, I would just hit the slide button, and it was like 3 times in a row I did that, and I finally just started setting down my slide advancer. So
it's all about trigger discipline.
And yeah, exactly. Yep. So yeah, I like I said, for me it was those are the types of things that we can't rehearse for that stuff, and I don't know if that kind of maybe threw me off my game a little bit, but not only did it kind of relaxed me on stage, or not stage, up front, because something else was going wrong. It made it so that I was able to just kind of breeze over the other mistakes I was making in my presentation. So yeah, that was my takeaway on how the presentation went. I thought it went well, but it went exactly as things go for me anyways. About 95% success rate.
You know, I must say, in your defense, why does that button even exist on that slide advancer? It's like I was looking at exactly what PowerPoint was doing, and I thought, who thought, yeah, I want to be able to have these exact sequence of events happen when I press a button.
Wasn't it just like turning the whole
It's,
screen black? Like if you just want to turn off
yeah.
the screen.
Or there was one that like
Yep.
exited PowerPoint entirely.
Oh, good.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it's useful. So let's step back, and we didn't actually talk about what the session was about. So, Alex, could you maybe give a elevator pitch, or like what was the session and what was some of the content that you talked about?
Yeah, absolutely. Our session was called Behave Like an Owner, Overcoming Training Challenges Through the Lens of Employee Ownership, which turned out to be slightly too long to appear in the conference app. So the name got truncated. That was great. But the concept started out when they released the request for proposals for presentations. And I thought, Thad and I did something kind of unique in the world of cybersecurity training when we did training in October and November 2023, which is the training that we did that really focused on what did we want our employee owners to do when they saw a suspicious message, as well as why were we asking people to do what we were asking them to do, and what were the potential impacts to careless behavior to the individual and to the companies in the Folience umbrella if we were to have, say, a serious malware or ransomware incident. From a financial perspective, how might it affect the stock price? And they're all things that we can talk about because we're all owners within the organization. That's not really a topic that you can bring up under a traditional corporate structure, just because that sense of ownership and pride in the company is typically not there. And so I thought, oh, that's really interesting. And so I said to Thad, oh, maybe we should submit a proposal to talk about the way that we trained people about cybersecurity. And then at the same time, actually literally later that same day, we had a meeting, and Ken White told us about some of the safety training initiatives that are happening at Lifeline and Cimarron that are going exactly the same way, with that lens of ownership being used in order to drive some of the changes that are being made to make those workplaces as safe as they can be. And so once we had those ideas, it was like, that seems like it all really goes together really well. It seems like we could represent all of our business units in a pretty cohesive talk and weave the theme of the same concept being applied in several different ways throughout the portfolio organizations. And so that kind of became the proposal, and we sent it off. And fortunately, the board at the conference association saw it the same way.
I really liked that you used actual data from the companies during the presentation to show. I mean, that's basically what you were talking about anyway, was you have to tailor your message to the people you're trying to change the behavior of.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's basically what you did for this presentation was tailor the message to people wanting to learn how to train.
Yeah.
It was great.
I'm glad you said that, Sean. I was actually one thing that I was concerned about was our presentation was talking about, try to be specific. Don't use abstracts. Don't talk high level. And then I felt like we might have been up there talking at a high level and maybe providing some abstract concepts that were hard to grasp. So it was almost hypocritical in a way that our presentation was presented. And we really focused on not being that way. We wanted to try to provide, we wanted to do what we said in our presentation and try to show some evidence and stats of how these concepts helped us. But we didn't go into the nitty gritty of the full training program that everybody had gone through for whatever different process or safety training that they were working on. So that's where we really felt like we had to kind of make up for the lack of technical information in there about what actually happened. So yeah, that's all. I just wanted to expand on that a little bit too.
Was there anything, I know that you guys at one point had to combine with another group and then you split apart, and so you had a presentation, then you had to cut, and then you had to expand it back out. But was there anything even still that didn't make the cut that you thought was like a really cool piece of knowledge, or something that just didn't make it to the final show?
So I'll elaborate more on the process. So we got accepted by the ESOP Association to give a talk, and we were super excited, and we announced it at our next shared services meeting, got everybody, patting us on the back and saying, good job, go get them. And then like 3 days later, out of the blue, they're like, oh, hey, by the way, we still want you to do the presentation, but somebody else put in a proposal for a similar topic, another training topic. Do you guys mind working together and just combining notes? And part of me was like, well, that's not really, you're asking two different ESOP cultures, two different styles, two different training. Like, I don't know how well it's really going to go together, but Alex talked me into it, and we said, sure, why not? So we started working with this other company to go through their notes and what they're working on. And it was actually a really, I don't want to say maybe informational. Is very enlightening to just see their process and how they handle things. And at that point, we did realize that we are going to have to make cuts. We're going to have to lose some of our examples. We're going to have to pick out which example makes the most sense. And we were working our way to basically having a completed presentation with only about half of the stuff that we wanted to share. And then in a month out, 2 months out?
About a month and a half.
I'm trying to remember how far. Yeah, so about a month and a half out from presentation day, September. So, back in late July, August, they were like, well, somebody dropped out. We now have room for both your presentations. Do you guys want to split back up again? And we both agreed that we would do that. So then we basically, for a third time, had to redo all of our information and put our presentation back together. So we were able to bring a lot more stuff in. So I felt like we didn't have to cut really much of anything. Although, and I say this in the most lucid term, we didn't cut anything or anybody, but our original plan was to have Ken White provide information on the safety training and stuff like that. So to come directly from Ken, I felt would have been very impactful, and it would have maybe brought some more nuance to our presentation. So that honestly is one thing that I feel like was not by choice. I really do wish we would have been able to keep Ken on there. And to be fair, I think we did ask him, right, Alex?
We did.
We were enough time had passed, and he was willing to it. He said he was willing to do it if we really needed him. But he's a little bit like me, where this wasn't something I was going to be jumping for joy about.
Yeah. I think the title of this episode could be Alex Talked Me Into It, because that seems like a common theme.
Yeah.
Alex, is there anything that you really wanted to fit into this presentation that didn't make it?
No, exactly the same as Thad said. When we worked with Distech, which shout out to them, by the way. They gave a fantastic presentation as well. I kind of started to view the presentation as like an outline. It was like, At this point, we can hit the headers of the outline, but we can't flush out any of the content. And so once they broke us back apart, it was like, oh, this is great. Now we had trimmed so much for that reduced content Cliff Notes version that now we felt like we had so much time in the world. It's like, how are we going to fill it all? It was great. And yeah, I think it worked out so much better for both companies because not only did we have quite a lot of content that really fleshed out our examples, but Distech's presentation was incredible. They were more focused on how they built their training program from the ground up and built a common language among their employees. They were sounds very similar to the leadership development program, and it was like, oh, this was a really interesting talk. I'm sure it'll plant a lot of seeds for ideas.
Yeah, I am glad to have seen both presentations in their full capacity because they were very different. Although they were both talking about training, it was almost like two sides of the same coin, different ways to do it. And yeah, it was good to see. I have a page of notes or 2 pages from their talk.
Yeah.
Is there anything about this experience, going from never attended a conference, an ESOP conference, to just jumping in and presenting, that might change the way that you do presentations or training going forward? I know you guys regularly do cybersecurity training. Has this altered your thought process at all?
That's a good question.
Say from my perspective, we talked. Not only did we mention this in our presentation, but I heard a lot of it at other sessions as well, and that's the combination of communication as well as feedback. We called it two-way communication in our presentation, where you just get that constant cycle of communication where we communicate what's changing, what's happening, but we also get feedback from how it went, and so that we can influence and just constantly continue to improve. Like we mentioned before, the most training or presentations that we do usually for Folience is our cybersecurity training. So I just noticed that there was a big glaring issue that we were talking about getting feedback on training and how things go. However, in our cybersecurity training, we've never asked for feedback. We never had like a survey to do or a card to fill out or anybody to talk about what they liked or didn't like. So that's something I would gonna look forward. I mean, I guess we got another month or so until cybersecurity training starts. So I would say look out for some sort of feedback link. We haven't really figured out how that's going to work yet, but I want to get some feedback on pretty much every presentation that I do, and maybe even eventually extending out just into IT as a general. How can we get feedback on the processes and things that we do to benefit all the business units and our employee owners?
That's a really good answer. It's going to be hard to follow that one. I would say if there's anything that I would change, I've always been hoping to refine my presentation strategy, and you always hope the next one is better than the one that came before. I think the other presentations that I saw actually would give me some tips and pointers. There are a lot of people that seem to have a more dynamic relationship with their slide deck. And they rely a lot more on giving the information verbally as opposed to presenting it written on the screen. I'm undecided as to whether I would want to switch that presentation style, but it's at least an option to consider, to basically rely more on imagery on the slide deck and communicating all the words and the content verbally. At least something I might consider.
That could be another title for the episode, is options to consider. That's
Exactly.
basically what the conference was. It's just a bunch of options.
Yeah.
Alex, I don't know if this is the presentation you're referencing, but I just wanted to look it up to make sure I didn't get it wrong. But Razor Holdings did a presentation on, they called it, can you get your CEO to do this? Culture from the top down.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the notes I took from that was embrace the goofy.
Yes.
And that's get outside your comfort zone, do things that are, goofy or cringeworthy. And that's how so our presentation, we didn't want it to be just stand up there and lecture and read stuff. So we tried to have some dynamic between Alex and I. Some of it honestly rehearsed, some of it more off the cuff, like when I was turning off the presentation on him. So I honestly think that was one note I took away from they were actually they were the presentation right before us, and that was one thing I took away was, if I was going to do it again, I might try to lean on the more casual side, and embrace the goofy and just, try not to be so, to the point and to the line. And maybe that would help with remembering those paragraphs and those points I wanted to make that I skipped over because I was too nervous about forgetting something that I actually did.
Sure. Yeah. Something I actually learned from the last regional conference, or something that stuck out to me, was if you are not making yourself uncomfortable, you're probably not growing.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of what led me to start this endeavor. Like, I am not into public speaking, probably like you, Thad. I know you've mentioned that, but I can talk to people. I can talk to employee owners, people that I know and deal with. Like, people in IT, we get the unique opportunity to just kind of go everywhere and talk to people. So that's, you just gotta jump in there and do it.
Yeah, that's good advice.
Speaking of jumping in, other than cybersecurity, what's your next presentation going to be?
So we finished up. We said thank you to everybody. People started standing up and filing out. And Thad turned off his microphone, started gathering up his notes. He said to me, "I'm never doing that again." So, but I think in the interest of Alex continuing to talk people into things, I've told him I think we should set our sights on a technology conference next. So we'll see what happens, and we'll also see how cybersecurity training goes here in 2024. But if we feel like we have something valuable to add, then maybe something around that.
Yep.
I know that there were a couple technology leaning topics at this conference. I'd love to see more technology specific, like how can you use technology to benefit your ESOP kind of talks. That would be great.
Yep. That I'm on the same thought process as you, Sean. I don't know what it would look like, but I because I'm going to be biased and I'm going to want to see about more technology and how other people are doing it. I did attend one roundtable on AI and how people are using it in their business. But as far as technology goes, that was the only thing I went to that was really talking about current technology. And to me, that was a blind spot, I think, at this conference. Was technology is everywhere. Every company is a technology company now. It's ingrained in everything we do. I think it's important not just for people in IT to, the same way I went and got to those other meetings that I didn't have any business doing there, but at least it was good awareness for me. I feel like that's the same type of thing that other employee owners could benefit from. So that's, if I were to ever do another presentation like this, I would like to see it more focused on technology and how it benefits the ESOP as a whole.
Definitely.
All right. Both of you, thank you very much for joining me. This has been great. I'm sure we'll hear from you again on the podcast, or you'll see them in the next cybersecurity training in about a month, probably.
Yeah, everybody, appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to ESOPOD. If you want to get in touch, send me an email at esopod@folience.com.